All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's really great to have you here. We are excited to be studying Ecclesiastes chapters 5 and 6 together for Sukkot. So we thought we'd just start with introducing ourselves very briefly and then go into our blessing for Torah study and some highlights from the chapters. So I'm Rebecca Epstein. I am the rabbi of West End Temple in Neponsit, New York, which is part of Queens and also known as part of the Rockaways. So we're right by the ocean here. And I've been a rabbi here for the past 2 years, and we are a congregation of about 80 member units.
Great. And hello from the West Coast. I'm Faith Joy Dantowitz. I'm the rabbi here at Congregation Emeth in Morgan Hill, which is south of San Jose. So it's South Bay area, not too far from San Francisco or just south of Silicon Valley. And I actually spent most of my life on the East Coast, most recently in New Jersey, but I've been living here in California since the summer of 2020. I arrived here smack in the middle of pandemic. And Congregation Emeth is a small congregation, similar size to yours, Rabbi Epstein, about 80 or so families. So we're delighted to get to share this time together. A nice chance to connect with Rabbi Epstein and get to learn with all of you about a really interesting scroll. So I'll let you give the intro to the scroll, and then we'll do the blessing.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so as we know, the book of Ecclesiastes is also called Kohelet in Hebrew, and it is read publicly during Sukkot. And it is one of the 5 Megillot, so part of the Tanakh that is part of the Megillot section, with 5 other books that are read throughout the year. And it's attributed to King Solomon, who was, a king of Israel in about like 12. So we think maybe he was was it 1200 BCE, Rabbi Dantowitz, that we said, or 900?
About 900.
He was about 900. We think maybe the book is somewhere between 900 and 100 BCE.
Lots of different dates that float around with it, so we're not going to focus.
Yeah. And it's part of what we call wisdom literature. So it gives us various takes on wisdom for life rather than being a narrative book. It's really the author's thought on the best way to live a meaningful life. And by way of introduction, I wanted to focus on one of the key words that occurs 38 times in the book, which is the word hevel. It's translated often as vanity, but it can also be translated as foolishness, nonsense. It can also be translated as vapor or breath. And so you probably have heard the quote, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. That's from Ecclesiastes. So I want to focus on that word a little bit, vanity, or I actually am preferring vapor or breath as I study it more and more. Sense of transience. So that word hevel is also the same as a very well-known biblical character named Abel. So you remember the story of Cain and Abel. So Cain and Abel were the children of Adam and Eve. And in a nutshell, they both made sacrifices to God, but Abel's sacrifice was accepted by God, whereas Cain's was rejected by God. And as you probably remember, Cain then killed his brother Abel, and presumably over jealousy because of Abel's sacrifice being accepted. So that was known as the first murder or the first killing in the Bible. So that's an interesting connection there that we have between the character Abel and this concept of breath or transience, because Abel's life was cut off, right? It was too short. He was killed by his brother. Yet he made a very important contribution during his life. He lived a meaningful life. He was accepted, his sacrifice, his gift to God was accepted by God. So it's kind of an interesting story to just think about as a backdrop to Ecclesiastes in terms of that question of what is a meaningful life? We know we're all going to pass away from this earth. Some of us, it's going to seem too soon. Some of us are going to live in a long life, right? That's sort of a overall theme of the holidays, of facing our mortality. But in the face of that, like, what is a meaningful life? How do we live our days knowing that they are transient and fleeting and like the breath itself? So we're going to look at a couple different themes within chapters 5 and 6. Basically, in a nutshell, how do we use our words? And how do we perceive our wealth and our money and our possessions? How do we relate to that vis-a-vis the question of what is a meaningful life? So we're going to jump into our Torah study blessing right now. And then each of us are going to be able to, we're going to take turns kind of leading different verses, leading the discussion of different verses. And we hope that people contribute and jump in and say what their thoughts are on our various quotes and this question of what is a meaningful life in the context of our fleeting days. So let's jump into our Torah study blessing. We'll say together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Blessed are you, the Lord our God, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with commandments and commanded us to study words of Torah. Amen. Okay. So our first quote that we're going to look at has the theme of that our words should be few. So does someone want to read this for us in English? I think everyone can just unmute themselves. Does someone want to read this out loud?
I'll read.
Okay.
Keep your mouth from being rash, and let not your throat be quick to bring forth speech before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. That is why your words should be few.
Okay. So any thoughts on that as you're reading this? What is the author trying to tell us here about speech and words?
Maybe to think before you speak.
Yeah.
And
That's
be
a great
careful
one.
what you say.
Be careful what you say. Yeah, absolutely.
I think some of my bosses would have loved this
Oh yeah. Why is that?
Say more, Joan.
because
I
I
think
spoke up a lot.
I think some of our politicians should have learned this.
Was that Anne? Were you saying that?
Joan
No,
was
that's
speaking.
me.
Oh, okay.
Joan, say more.
Oh, yes.
Because I spoke up often in
Okay.
meetings, and I got told at times not to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right. I mean, you're pointing out something really interesting, right? On the one hand, it sometimes seems wise to say, well, think before you speak, don't speak very much. But on the other hand, we also want to be able to speak what's on our mind and say when there's injustices, right? Speak up when there's problems going on. That's also a very big theme in our tradition, to give reproof where it's necessary. Yeah. Okay. So did someone raise their hand?
Did Anne have their hand up? Yeah, Anne, you had
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, my comment is this is telling you not to be rash when you're speaking to God. I'm
Oh,
not thinking about talking to other people. Just talk a lot. We're always chatting back
right.
and forth, a whole bunch of people at the same time. And I think this says to bring forth speech before God.
Interesting.
So who are you talking to here? What do you rabbis think?
Yeah,
No,
that's really interesting. Yeah.
No, it's great. And we'll see the commentary on that as well. Sure. It's definitely saying keep your mouth from being rash and let not your throat be quick to bring forth speech before God. But we can also parse it out and focus on aspects of the verse as well, but good point to note that this is how we speak before God, for sure.
Yeah. Did someone else, wait, Anne, I see you have your hand raised. Oh, someone wrote something in the chat also. Let's see what's in the chat.
And how you're looking, I think there's a big difference between talking about how you speak and
Yeah.
how often you speak.
Mm-hmm.
Chrissy added in the chat, don't bring all your stuff to God because you can take care of it yourself on earth.
Mm,
Thanks, Chrissy.
interesting. Yeah.
Isn't all speech before God?
Is there what?
Isn't all speech before God? God knows everything, supposedly, and hears everything. It doesn't always act on everything.
Yeah, I mean that's a great, that's sort of how I was reading it, like that this notion of before God is, on the one hand, as Anne said, it could be speech that you're actually speaking to God. On the other hand, it could just be speech in general, knowing that all of our life, all of what we do and say, all of the words that we speak are in some way like before God, if we have that sense of God being an all-encompassing presence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Faith Joy, would you mind moving down so we can look at the Rashi a little bit here?
Absolutely. Here you go.
Thank you. Okay, so Rashi was a commentator from the Middle Ages, and so this first one, to utter a word, so he's trying to understand, what does that mean to utter a word before God? So this, I think, is the question that Anne and Jerry were sort of taking two different sides on this. Are we talking about all speech, or are we talking specifically about speech toward God? And so Rashi comes to clarify for us, in his opinion, this is talking about speaking critically towards God, that we should avoid doing that. What do you think? Are we ever allowed to criticize God with our words?
Think about some biblical examples there, right?
Right? Yeah.
Coming back to the beginning of the Torah soon.
That's right. Right. So
I don't know how they can come to that conclusion.
Yeah. You want to say more about that? Yeah.
It's just, how often do you criticize God? God is there and helping you, supposedly, or observing you to help yourself.
Yeah. Great. Any other comments on that one? Okay. You can look at the second Rashi. So Rashi wants to clarify, for God is in heaven and you are on earth. Even if the weak one is above and the strong one below, the fear of the weak one is upon the strong one. How much more so when it is the strong one, i.e., God, who is above, and the weak one who is below.
So for God, going back to the actual verse, right? So for God is in heaven and you are on earth. That's from the actual verse.
Yeah. Interesting. Any comments on that one?
I don't think I understand it.
I'm not sure I understand. He's trying to make, like, he's sort of saying.
Well, I think when we first look at it, if you first think about the verse, looking at the actual verse, going back to the actual verse. So for God is in heaven and you are on earth, that's why your word should be few. So I think often we'll think of God as the one with more power, stronger, right? God is above if God is in the heaven. And this Rashi is flipping it, saying, even if the weak one is above and the strong one is below, so if God were not the strong one, right? If God were the weak one, we still want to show respect to God and how we're speaking out in any way. Flipping the power dynamic there. If we were stronger, I don't know how we could be stronger than God, but the idea of still being careful with our words, I think that's a really good message for how we bring it out into the world with other people. When we assume there's a power differential, whether it's humans to God or just humans to humans, and how we speak to other people when it's somebody who has authority over us, or somebody who doesn't. Do we speak differently? Or are we careful to speak the same way with kindness and caring and not attacking somebody?
That makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think the phrase restraining impulses is the key to all of this.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Right. To restrain your impulse is a really big part of everything, right? That we want to manage how we react and what we do and all of that. We have a hand up from our URJ Rabbi team up, Rabbi Bernholtz, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Anne and
Oh,
who
and Anne
else?
too. Both of them. Anne and then Michael. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a long time ago. Never mind.
Okay, that was an old
I
one.
don't
That's what I
even
thought.
remember. Yeah, I'll lower. I think I lowered it.
Okay, it's down now. Okay, we've your hand's still up, Anne, but okay, Rabbi Bernholtz, did you want to share
Right
something?
here, I lowered it.
Now you did.
Okay. Great.
So, as I'm seeing it, and Rabbi Dantowitz, I'm not sure if what you were meeting was as we're getting into Genesis, where you have the argument between God and Abraham over Sodom and Gomorrah.
Absolutely.
And it's just that whole conversation is so striking how Abraham approaches God, and
Right.
yet God also then listens to Abraham and hears him out.
Hmm.
Right.
Which is also extraordinary. But then it kind of, you get to the end and it's like, God's like, okay, you've said your piece. Goodbye. I'm going away.
I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. Right. But to speak, that's raising your voice, but in a respectful way, not just attacking. I mean, Abraham's angry. Like, how could you do all of this? But Abraham's presenting the argument, right? Rather than just saying.
And I think we've also, and I think we've had over the last couple of days some really interesting conversations built around how you read and tone. And you, as you're saying, angry, I always like envision Abraham going, and God, have you considered the fact that maybe there's 5? That it's really kind of this, like, I don't mean to talk to you because I really am just Dustin Ash, but God, while I've got your attention and while I'm talking to you. It's not with that he's shaking his fist with righteous indignation, that it's just kind of this, suggestion to God of maybe you should consider it. And it's just, that's
with
the
humility.
With humility, it's just that beautiful way of, as we're reading these pieces of Ecclesiastes, we've talked about maybe it's with cynicism or maybe it's with nechemta, with hope that goes with it, that there's different ways of seeing all of these.
Very interesting. That's great.
Thank you.
All right.
Did you raise your hand again, Anne, or no?
No.
Just going back up. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Are we going to continue with the next verse?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right.
Great.
We're going to continue with the next verse. Okay. So let's turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4. Would somebody like to read this verse in English?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Thank you.
Our sages at the beginning.
No, just the verse, please. It is better.
Excuse me. It is better not to vow at all than to vow and not fulfill.
Okay, thank you. We'll get to the other part in a second. So just that first part, Tov asher lo tidor, mishtidor velo tishalem. So it's better to not even make a vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it. So let's think about that, especially in light of the holidays we've just been experiencing. Anything come to mind before I say more? Jerry.
Yes, a vow is sacred, so you don't really want to make it unless you believe in yourself.
Making a vow to God, yeah. Sheila.
Yes, I of course think of Kol Nidre, and that I love the tune of Kol Nidre, but that prayer never made sense to me, because okay, so you can make a vow, okay, Kol Nidre, please forget the vows that I made and consider them null and void. I've never understood that.
So to say a little bit more about Kol Nidre, Kol Nidre came about with a time period where Jews were not free to practice their Judaism without persecution. So they had to often pretend not to practice their Judaism. So I think it's more about vows between a human being and God, a Jew and God, understanding that it was a time period when they had to pretend that they couldn't really practice who they were. But it's been expanded, like all vows don't count anything. And so there was a lot of question about rabbis saying, should we even keep this prayer in our liturgy? This is a different time frame, but the music, the melody, it's so powerful. And our prayers, if we read every single prayer literally, like a lot of our prayers, we're going metaphorically or just the sense of it, or we're chanting it in Hebrew and not always thinking about the exact meaning of the prayer. So there's just such beauty in that prayer. But sure, we wouldn't want people to think like, don't ever trust a Jewish person because all vows can be nullified always. You know, that's not what it's about. So it's important to mention that and to think about that. In Kohelet's case, is, you know, the text is saying just don't even say a vow than to actually utter a vow and not be able to fulfill it. It makes me think about less intense than a vow, but like it promises. Like, don't you hate when somebody says, I promise, you know, I'll do all the dishes before you're, you know, after dinner, and then the person doesn't do it and you want to do something else in the kitchen, you can't do any of your prep because the sink is still full with all the dirty dishes. Not that I ever experienced this all the time, right? So just, you know, the promises that are made that aren't kept, so it's much more serious a vow made before God. So why don't we take a look at this first commentary from Rabbeinu Bachya? I forget who was reading before. If you wanted to continue, you're welcome to continue. These are 13th century commentaries that we're looking at here.
Okay, that was me, Anne.
Thanks, Anne.
Our sages at the beginning of the first chapter of Kohelet, is that right?
Yes.
Interpret the verse in Kohelet 5:4 to mean that better than even keeping to the terms of the vow is not to make a vow in the first place. If one wants to bring an offering to God, one should do so at the time when one decides on it without first making a vow about it. They also say in Nedarim 22 that even people who make vows and kept them on time are called sinner. They base themselves on this verse, that is, that the only way to avoid being sinner in relationship to the subject of vows is by not taking any vows.
Not making any vows. So in a nutshell, what is Rabbeinu Bachya saying about vows in general? Like, yay or nay?
Nay.
Right? So just don't even do the vows. Just don't do them. But let's take another look at another text from Chizkuni, another commentary about Yaakov, meaning Jacob, so our ancestor Jacob, because this is a passage I think it's going to be familiar. The context here for Genesis 28, this is after Jacob has stolen the blessing and the birthright of his brother Esau, and that his mother Rebekah helped him finagle from his father, and he is now running off to his uncle Laban, and he stops for the night and has a really amazing dream with angels going up and down the ladder, and he wakes up and says, surely God was in this place and I didn't know it. So this is a commentary about Jacob making a vow. Would somebody like to read this to get a sense of Yaakov?
I will.
Okay, go ahead, Joan.
If you were to ask that according to the Talmud in the Kohelet 2, based on Kohelet 5:4.
Kohelet, that's the name of Ecclesiastes in Hebrew, Kohelet. This is chapter 5, verse 4.
That is better not to make any vows than to make vows and not pay them on time. So why did Yaakov make such a vow? The word
lay more.
Thank you. Which follows the quote above was added to in the Torah to show that Yaakov, who was in dire circumstances, made the vow due to his desperate situation. We are to learn that from this, that in such circumstances, God even welcomes a vow, as it is proof that the person making it has turned to God for help.
So I brought both of those passages because we're getting opposite views here, right? You know, like, just like, oh, Hevel Hevelim, like all life is vanity, but maybe there's some joy in the moment. Here we're like, yes vows, no vows. They're terrible. Don't ever make a vow. And here it's like, well, if you're really desperate, perhaps it's okay to make a vow.
So in the first part, I was thinking, don't promise. Just do whatever it is. And then after reading this, I'm thinking they're saying, well, at least if you think about it and you promise, even if you don't follow through, you're at least doing something.
Great take. Yeah, trying really hard. Any other comments on that before we go into our next verse? Because I'm watching the clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment from a long time ago. I kind of came back. To me, there's vows and then there's vows. For example, when you vow you're not going to leave any dirty dishes before you go to bed.
That's a promise. That's not a vow. That's a promise.
Yeah, that's like I can honestly say I've taken 3 vows in my life, and so far I've kept 2 of them. Yeah, it's a big deal not to keep a vow. But even in 1970, when I first started teaching in Los Angeles, I had to take a vow that I would support the Constitution of the United States of America and that I was not a communist. It was like this 50 years ago. But you know what? Even not being in the military, that's like a sacred thing when you say that. You know, like big things, you know, they're important when you're saying it, like when you're getting married,
Your marriage vows, right?
Hurting, whatever you're doing, when it's a big deal, I think you know. And I think they knew in the Bible too.
Great. All right. I'm going to move on. Oh, somebody else had something to add?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to verse 9. Never satisfied.
Okay, so we're changing topics. We did a couple things about our words and vows. Now we're gonna switch gears a little bit to think about how we relate to our money, our power, our possessions. So does someone want to read this one? Kohelet chapter 5, verse 9. A lover of money.
I'll read.
Okay.
A lover of money never has his fill of money, nor a lover of wealth has his fill of income. That too is futile.
Right. So there's that key word again. It's translated as futile. The Hebrew word is havel or hevel. And so you could insert a different word in there. Futile, that too is vanity, that too is vapor, that too is transient. So is this ring true to you in life? People that love money never have their fill of it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. People who have a job that make a certain amount of money and then they want to make more money and they have enough to buy not just one house, but many houses and many cars and many vacations. And there's always a desire to have more and more and more. What is that if we're looking at the money part of it, right?
I think there's a difference between those that love money and those that have money.
Okay. You want to say more about that? Yeah.
Have money and not always want more. In fact, one of my friends who now is very comfortable with money, and I was asking her, do you want to win the lottery? And she said, I think I have. And she meant her family and her house and all these other things.
That's wonderful.
So I think that's very different than those that want more and more and more.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Sheila's got her hand up.
Oh, Sheila. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, it reminds me of in Pirkei Avot. He who is
You're
rich.
jumping right ahead. It's great. Keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
See,
okay. He was rich and who's satisfied with their lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great teaching, right?
Okay.
Right, because we see that, right, that's sort of a thing we say about Western society in general, right? Or like American culture in particular, no matter how much money you have, we're sort of taught to always want more and need more and not feel like we don't have enough, and the idea that sort of perpetuates our economy, or our economy, kind of relies on our thinking this way, that we never have enough, right? But here Pirkei Avot comes with a very countercultural message. It's there at the bottom of the page. Who is rich? It's not about how much money you have. It's about rejoicing, sameach bechelko, rejoicing in your portion, rejoicing in what you have. And then it quotes the Psalms, you shall enjoy the fruit of your labors, you shall be happy and you shall prosper. And then the Pirkei Avot continues, you shall be happy is referring to this world, and you shall prosper is referring to the world to come. So there's the idea here that if it sort of repeats itself, you shall be happy and prosper, but the repetition is meant to tell us that if you do this, if you rejoice in your lot, you're going to be happy today, and it's like a good thing for the world to come as well. Yeah. Anne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, to me, money is like either it can be like paper or coins or certificates or whatever, but it only represents something.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're poor, it might represent security. But for a lot of these super rich people, I look at like Jeff Bezos and like how he spends his money and how he treats his employees. It's not unlike Andrew Carnegie. He did the same thing. But, there's a lot of philanthropists. Like, look at Michael Bloomberg. He's a good example. This guy's made millions of dollars and he's given millions of dollars away. And I think that's kind of like a Jewish ethic in a lot of ways. And that, we're not the only people that give money away. But some people, their money is fun to make. And then at the end, it's fun to give away.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it representing them to them? I don't know.
Yeah, it also reminds me later, or I forget, somewhere else in Ecclesiastes, we have a very famous phrase, which is you can't take it with you, right? Everything that you make, can't take it with you. It's gonna,
when you say that brings to mind, I feel like it was an old commercial where they show somebody who's died and there's the Mercedes going into the grave with the person like, take the expensive car with you. You can't, right? I just wanted to go back, if it's okay. Just that Rashi, the Rashi commentary is very different than what we were riffing on with the Pirkei Avot, really, that the one who loves money, and I apologize that it's a masculine text. I didn't go back and make everything gender inclusive, which I would have done if I had a little more time. But that it's really about not being satisfied as whoever loves to perform God's commandments never has their fill of them. So this positive notion of that, like you never have your fill, like this joy of a lover, money never has fill his money or wealth, like to want to keep filling the commandments for God. So that's a positive take on it. I want to keep doing mitzvot, want to keep doing them. And want to keep studying Torah. So Hope has her hand raised.
Hope, yeah.
Oh,
Hope, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I unmuted.
Okay.
That's just the you shall be happy. I have a friend who just had to sell her house and move into an assisted living place. And her theory is wherever I am, I'm going to be happy. She said, before I had to do this, I made up my mind that this is where I am now in my life, and I'm going to be happy being here. And that meant a whole lot to me, listening to her say that.
Wow.
It's great wisdom from your friend, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Happy with her lot. Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it reminds me of what you're saying, reminds me that, maybe not all the time, but a lot of times our mindset is a choice that we can decide, like, okay, this is a really tough circumstance, but we're gonna try to rejoice in it the best way we can,
and thinking about the high holy days with Unatana Tokef, right? We say that Ma'avirin at Ruach HaGezerah, that we can transform the harsh decree. Like we can choose how to respond. We can't change the harsh decree, but we can choose with Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, but just that's Hope's friend's message, right? To be choosing joy, choosing happiness, choosing our mindset. I just saw a meme the other day, which is the picture of the glass, and it's different views, like optimist, pessimist, surrealist. So glass half empty, glass half full. The artist view, like a paintbrush. Artist view, paintbrush in the glass, or just like the glass upside down. Like, what is our view? And I wish I could remember who taught me this years ago. It's not about the glass half empty or glass half full. It's like maybe we just need to get a different size glass so that we're satisfied with what we have. So part of that. Do you want to continue with the next commentary?
Sure. Well, wait, I see Norma also has a hand up. Also, Norma, did you want to say something?
I think part of the philosophy of Kohelet is eat, drink, and be merry. This is the way it is. These things are fleeting. We may have that, we may have wealth, we may have power, but it's going away. We're all going to die. So while we're here, let's take the gift of God and eat, drink, and be merry. And
I love that, Norma. That really fits so well with Sukkot, which is Zman Simchatina, the season of our rejoicing. Right? We are supposed to rejoice on Sukkot. just to dwell in the sukkah, eat and sleep, and maybe drink in the sukkah, sleep in the sukkah. And of course, if it's raining, then we don't need to be in the sukkah because that might not make it so joyful. I mean, if you love being in the rain, okay, but you don't have to be there. Yes, eat, drink, and be merry. Absolutely on Sukkot for sure.
Yeah, and you bring up that important aspect to this, that it's always in light of our mortality, right? That this holds up a mirror to that aspect of being on this earth. And that we should enjoy it and rejoice in it. And perhaps especially because we know it's going to end, or perhaps because we know it's going to end, that enables us to enjoy it and find meaning. Yeah. Let's see. How are we on time? Should we move forward, or what do you think? Or do you want to do this one, Faith Joy?
I'm going to let you choose if you want to do the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, if you feel like it's too your choice. Read it if you want to.
Yeah, maybe I'll just read it. It is really,
it's a little long.
I have to give some props to Faith Joy, who really put this together and found these amazing sources. So she found some really awesome ones. So from Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so see if this rings true to you. People have varying character traits. Some people are angry by nature, forever bursting with rage. Then there are others who are tranquil and who never become angry, or who become angry only once in many years. You will find a man who is extremely haughty and another who is extremely humble. Some are lustful, their souls never satisfied with their unbridled cravings. Others possess a very pure heart and have no desire even for little things which are required for physical well-being. Some people have a voracious hunger for wealth and are not satisfied with all the money in the world. As it is written, the person who loves money will not be satisfied with money. So there's our quotation from Kohelet. Others have very modest desires and are satisfied with little, which does not even fill their needs, and yet make no effort to earn a livelihood. Some will afflict themselves with hunger and accumulate money this way, and the little they eat of their own food causes them distress. Others spend all their money wastefully. It is the same with all other character traits and concepts, as, for example, the cheerful and the gloomy, the miser and the noble-hearted, the cruel and the compassionate, the gentle and the hard-hearted, and so on. What do you think? Does this ring true? Yeah. Do you think if you read Ecclesiastes enough, maybe you could change your mind a little, change your perceptions a little bit?
Huh.
I don't know.
I'm going to be happy despite everything they say there.
Okay, yeah.
All right, I like that. Jerry's happy. All right. Well, that's a good segue. If that's okay, I'll move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
Chapter 5, verse 18. A gift from God. So, who would like to read this verse here, where it says "also"? Would somebody like to read this next verse?
I can read it, Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, whenever a person is given riches and property by God, and is also permitted by God to enjoy them and to take his portion and get pleasure for their gains, that is a gift of God.
Okay, so tell me what this verse means.
I was going to say gift, yeah. That we should use our gifts and enjoy them if we have a skill or talent that comes naturally to us.
Okay, so you're reading it in a different way than you're adding your own like kind of midrash to it. So you're saying if we have gifts, we should use our gifts. Beautiful. I'm reading it in a way of saying that if we are given riches and property by God, whatever we have, and we're able to enjoy what we get. So right, it could be our gifts to enjoy our gifts. That to be able to recognize what we have is a gift in itself. Yeah, actually, I love your take on it. I wasn't thinking about using our gifts, but just like whatever we've been blessed with, whether it's our own gifts to share with the world or the gifts of abundance, to be comfortable, to be happy with our lot. So, and I'm just going to share, I'm thinking of this verse a lot in relation to a good friend of mine who had 2 of her 3 children got married in the past few months. So it's a very busy time of planning weddings. And she had gone to a concert, a Billy Joel concert with her sisters, I think the week or so before her second child's wedding. And as he was singing the song, these are the times to hold on to, for they will not last forever. She was just recognizing the abundance of joy in her life and her family's life, how just amazing it is to know how much joy we can have, how blessed we can be, the gifts we have, and to cherish them. So that's what we want. Like and I think in this world where we're emerging out of COVID, right? We're post-COVID, but there's been a little uptick last month. Some rabbis and cantors were sick for the high holidays with COVID, but hopefully they're on the mend now. But this idea of like, once we're able to start traveling again and getting back together, just like to really savor that experience of being together with our loved ones whom we could only see on Zoom for so many months and years. So just really taking joy in all of this, or just celebrating whatever it is that we're celebrating, even the simple things, just whatever it is. Any other thoughts on just the verse itself? And then we'll go on to a couple comments on it.
I have a thought. Billy Joel must have read this and believed it, because I know so many people who just saw this concert.
Lovely, lovely. I always say when people read interesting Torah portions, I say, where do you think Steven Spielberg gets his material for the movies? They like just turn the Torah out. Lots of great ideas. So Rashi says, and the power, what is permitted to enjoy them in his life, meaning that you have this wonderful thing happening, the gifts, the abundance that you're blessed with, or your own gifts that you can share, and you get to enjoy them, right? We hear of so many Renaissance artists, right, who we experience and enjoy their work that was gifted to the world, but so many of them did not get to enjoy their works in their lifetime. They were impoverished and struggling, and often people are struggling and don't get to enjoy it. But to be able to really enjoy what you've been blessed with is pretty wonderful. So looking at go ahead, somebody adding on?
I agree with Sheila that if you have something, don't be embarrassed. Like if you're able to sing, don't say, oh, I can't sing in front of people or whatever. If you have a gift, share it. Be proud of what the gifts you do have.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Sheila and Joan, just adding that layer. And from the Midrash Rabbah, Kohelet Rabbah, also any person to whom God has given wealth and property and granted them control to eat from it and to bear his portion and to rejoice in his toil, this is a gift from God. And also any person to whom God has given wealth and property and granted them control to eat from it. Rabbi Pinchas said, this attribute is not in effect for all people, but rather for one whom the Holy One, blessed be God, desires. So that's kind of interesting, that thinking about, is God showing favor for somebody, to be able to enjoy this? I find that it's like a challenging midrash in a way, that maybe why does one person get to enjoy it, or how does that work? Does that kind of, how does that last line there hit you? Does that feel uncomfortable, comfortable? Like, is that the God you experience?
I think it's just luck.
Just luck. Going just luck.
Because people have so much who haven't deserved it. So how do you account for that?
How do you account for that? Right. It's really hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard. Right. Right. Or back to Billy Joel, only the good die young. Right. No. So, all right. I'm going to let
have different attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to see it as maybe that each of us considers wealth maybe something different. Wealth doesn't necessarily have to be money.
Correct.
I taught my whole life, and I've always considered my gift, my wealth, my ability to teach.
Beautiful. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I know we're going to move on to the next one, Ecclesiastes chapter 6, the first couple of verses.
Yeah. So this is kind of on a similar theme, right, of how we connect to our riches, property, wealth. So does someone want to read this for us? There's an evil.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. You go.
Okay. There is an evil I have observed under the sun, and a grave one it is for man, that God sometimes grants a man riches, property, and wealth, so that he does not want for anything that his appetite may crave, but God does not permit him to enjoy it. Instead, a stranger will enjoy it. That is a futility and a grievous ill.
So what is this talking about here?
This is really pessimistic.
This one, yeah, it's a good observation because I just was reading a little bit about this. Here's that word again, futility or vanity. Sometimes it's paired with a judgment, that it's bad or grievous. This futility is grievous and it's evil. Sometimes the futility is not given a judgment in Ecclesiastes. It's just something is futile or it's vaporous or breath, and it's not that the author doesn't judge it as grievous or evil. And then even sometimes later, especially at the end of the book, the futility or the transience is judged as a good thing. So that's an interesting thing here. It's definitely a pessimistic view of whatever futility is identified here, right? So Anne, did you want to say something about
that?
I
had a comment. Yeah. When I read Ecclesiastes another time, what really got me was they were talking about people accumulate a lot of wealth, they work very hard, and then they're going to die, and that money is going to be transferred to, let's say lazy kids or people that can't do anything with it, or they're going to, spend all the money. So when they're talking about accumulating all this money, a lot of times you don't get to enjoy it. And the people you're going to give it to, really, they haven't worked for it, and they're not really very worthy of it. With really rich people, they usually know how to teach the next generation how to use the money. But with no rich, a lot of times the second generation are like, spoiled jet setter dope addicts. Those are just extreme examples, but I think they talk about this. Spend a lot of time making money, and maybe if it's not a gift from God, it's transferred to who knows what.
Yeah, right. I mean, we hope with, I think, well, I don't know, at least for me, the things that we accumulate in life, whether it's our skills or our knowledge or our riches, anything like that, like you hope that it lasts. You hope that your legacy lasts, right? You hope that it lasts in some way beyond you, but it doesn't always happen that way. But I do think that we in Judaism, we have this very strong theme about memory, right? And keeping someone's memory alive, which can mean not only what they hope to build in the world materially, but also like the gifts that they brought, their qualities, the ways they inspire us. And that can become our legacy too, beyond us. And I don't know. Yeah, someone else want to speak on this one? That is a futility. Hope, yeah.
It made me think of one of my students whose parents worked many hours to accumulate a lot of wealth and a lot of status in the community. And he used to come into my room and he'd tell all the other kids how rich his parents are and that they lived in this big mansion. And then he'd say, but I never see them. There was the nanny and the house cleaner and all these strangers who were benefiting from their money, where the children really weren't in any emotional way, just in a monetary way. This is what I have. And he'd listen to the other kids and see what he didn't have.
Right. That's painful.
That is. Yeah, because these verses about riches and property and wealth, on the one hand, they encourage us, like, try to enjoy them for what they are, right? But on the other hand, there does seem to be this other aspect to it of like, that's not the only part of life. It's not enough to just have riches and property and wealth. Like that doesn't give us a true sense of meaning in life. You know, maybe it's sort of telling us, okay, if we have riches, let's make sure to enjoy them. If we have riches, let's make sure to try to pass it on to other people who will appreciate it. You know, otherwise it ends up being vanity and futile. It's a part of life, but it's something that we have to make meaning out of. It can't just be for itself. It's not its own end. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's look at this Rashi, and then I think we're gonna do one last poem here. Okay, so Rashi said, yet God does not give him the power to eat thereof. So what does that phrase mean? Which is not exactly translated up here, but it's referring to this phrase, I think, that God does not permit him to enjoy it, which literally it's really to eat of it. Okay. So what does this mean? That he should be happy with his portion, to find satisfaction in his wealth. For he strives to oppress and to accumulate much wealth, as the matter is stated, and he is like death and is never satisfied. And also God does not give him the power to perform charity, from which to eat in the future, but a stranger will take that money and perform charity, and he will benefit from it. However, the Midrash Agada, another midrashic source, explains it differently, as referring to Torah study. So on the one hand, so this last sentence is kind of interesting here. The Midrash Agada says that the power to eat of your wealth, or the power to enjoy your wealth, refers to Torah study. That if you're wealthy enough, hopefully you will study Torah, and that's how you will make the best use of your wealth. So that's one explanation. And then this other explanation looks like it has something to do with, that you need to give charity. Otherwise you're not like really getting the power to eat from your wealth. Is that how you would understand it, Faith Joy? Yeah, really interesting. Yeah. Okay, so we
move to the end of chapter 6. Okay.
Yeah.
A simple question: how do we know what to do with our lives? So, figuring it out. We're all figuring it out always. Who would like to read the translation here and some extra one from JPS? Anybody want to read that?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Who can possibly know what is best for a man to do in life, the few days of his fleeting life? For who can tell him what the future holds for him under the sun? Who can possibly know what is best for people to do in life, the few days of this fleeting life? For who can tell what the future holds for them under the sun?
Thank you. So, how do we know? This is a big question. Who can possibly know what is best for a person to do with their life, right? This is, is God our career counselor? What color is your parachute? Helping us figure out what we want to do. How do we know? How can we figure out what the future will hold? I think this is a big question. Any thoughts about it?
I heard a thing once that said, if you don't know, like maybe you don't know what career you want, or, if you're going to be a rabbi or whatever, but it said, when you start thinking about that, you're probably already doing what you want. On some level, you're performing what's going to lead to a career. And I think that was true for me.
I think if you have inspirational teachers along the way, then you can find a better way to do whatever it is that you do.
Sure. I think an inspirational teacher is, going back to our teachers here, is very impactful. But still, there's that question of, but what do you want to do? And there may be many choices, many options, trying to figure it out, discerning what you want to do. It's hard. I think for some people, it's very clear. I've always wanted to be an X. I've always wanted to be this. And for others, it may be like, I'm not sure. What do I want to do? So just the questions about that.
My son had
people what
some
they wanna
aptitude
do. Oh.
tests, and then they told him a lot of things. He was so qualified in so many areas, and they told him the one thing he shouldn't do, which he didn't do, and that's the one thing he loves to do, which is cook.
Huh.
Wow.
Interesting. Was somebody else trying to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say
Norma.
for some people, what they want to do and what they have to do are very different.
That's a really good point. Okay. So I'm thinking about musicians, right? So some family members who are in that category where you may want to work full-time as a musician, but that may not pay all the bills, right? So you can still be a musician and still do musical things, but you need to do something else to be able to pay for your rent and your food and whatever. Is that kind of what you're referring to, Norma?
That and the fact that, let's say, you know, you have a family business and you're expected to be part of that business, whether you want to be or not. So, you know, you go to college and you get to take the subjects you want. And then when you graduate, there isn't a discussion of, yeah, I'm going to be a musician. The discussion is, oh, we own this restaurant, you're working in it.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I know many people are in that situation, right? Where it's either you're pushed into the family business or whatever career path some family member may be really strongly encouraging you to do. Right. And sometimes people end up being happy in it. Sometimes they resent it always. Sometimes they make a change. But yeah, that's definitely a common story, a common thread. So great.
It's interesting that you know, like I'm reminded that the author was the son of a king, right? It's attributed to King Solomon, and that maybe for him, from his seat of power and wealth, he could kind of like pontificate on this question of like, what is the best thing for me to do? But for many of us,
no choices.
We're connected to, we have responsibilities, we have family, you know, obligations and so on, that it's not such a philosophical question that we can just kind of think about. Like, it's more like, all right, what are we obligated to do?
Well, there's just one other thing, you know, just in terms of, is it preordained? What about free will? I mean, that's another discussion, but that last sentence, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Is that preordained, or is it, I mean, that's just another discussion.
Yes, definitely. This has been wonderful. I wanted to share a poem before we end today, and so that's why I stopped the screen share. I did put the Google Doc in the chat. If anybody wants to be able to see the text that we've used today, you're welcome to copy that link. This is a poem based on the first verse of chapter 5, where we began today, about words should be few. And it's in a book called A Poet's Bible by David Rosenberg. But don't open your mouth too quickly or spill out your heart in an alphabet soup of prayers. His vision spreads across heaven where a mouthful of words aren't needed, and you're on earth, where words can come cheaply to someone so low to the ground he can't foresee the next minute, the next second, when suddenly his mood changes and he is denying what he just said. Bad dreams, daydreams, fantasies spread like blinding steam from too much living in the moment. Too many things to do with no pause for real reflection, and hot air streams from the mouth of someone who talks too much. If you've promised to do something, if you've sworn to God, do it. He has less time than you have to sit in the steam bath and wish the world away. Pay what you owe even as it pains, and your eyes will clear a path for you. Better yet, don't make promises you can't keep, especially to yourself. It's your mouth, in your body, so don't let it betray flesh of your flesh. And when you do, and when the messenger comes to collect on it, take your foot out of your mouth. Don't pretend it was perfectly natural to mistakenly be licking someone's foot. Don't pretend your mouth is not in your head, but respect the work of your creator who put it there. He is perfectly right to be angry with your swollen voice, and to puncture the blister of things you've accumulated around you with the grasping hands he also presented to you, along with the gift of language you inflect with the mouths of stale air, from the disembodied chatter of fantasies and dreams, false gods and persons, streaming from the unchecked mind, inflating the world with unreal messages. Wake up and trust your maker.
Very interesting.
So grateful for all of you to be here today. And I hope that you're enjoying this whole week of learning Ecclesiastes Kohelet, a wonderful opportunity to get together with our colleagues across the country, our congregants across the country, and to just learn together as we celebrate Zman Simchatenu, the season of our rejoicing, even if it's vapor, it's futile. Hopefully we'll seize the moment each day to seek joy and to enjoy it. And a joy for me to get to work with Rabbi Epstein today and to get to be with all of you. So the next session is tomorrow at noon. I know, and there's also the YouTube is the recording of the first couple of sessions. After the end of the week, all the recordings will be sent to you so that you have access to it if you want to watch it again.